Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's time again for another edition of the Weekly Member Spotlight. I could not be more excited to be sitting down today with a new friend of mine and someone I would venture to say folks in our local market maybe have not met before. Maybe on the national level, you recognize the face of our guest today. But I wanted to make a quick introduction and then I'll tell you why our guest is our guest and how this came about today. So Duy Vu is the Director of Marketing with the Associated Management Company. And Duy and I are members in the NAA Lyceum program for 2022. We are both working hard. We're about 3/4 of the way through the program. And there is a project for all of us, sort of a capstone project, if you will. And we were challenged to come up with a presentation of sorts to sort of demonstrate something we are passionate about in the industry, something that we want to make a difference within the apartment industry. And so for me, this Weekly Member Spotlight initiative has been a force of nature locally for the GCNKAA. That's the Greater Cincinnati Northern Kentucky Apartment Association. That's a huge acronym. But we've also had the opportunity through our affiliation to interview some folks at the national level. And Duy is one of the first people that I got to spend time with over the summer when we came together in person for the Lyceum program. And I didn't volunteer him, but I did politely ask him if he would be willing to participate. So backstory on why Duy is our guest today. And Duy, that was a very long introduction, but I'd love to ask if you would take a moment, introduce yourself and tell our guests a little bit about who you are, what you do, and maybe how you came about being in the apartment industry.
Oh, yeah, of course. So as you said, my name is Duy. I'm the Director of Marketing. I also have the privilege right now for serving as the president for the Property Management Association for West Michigan and the state of Michigan. My term's ending this year, and then I'll be moving on to the past president role. As far as how I got into the industry, it was actually just completely by chance. I had just graduated, I had my bachelor's, I was trying to find a job in marketing, and I was working with a temp agency that helped people find office roles. And they said, we don't necessarily have that, but we have something kind of in sales. Are you interested? I said, sure. And then all of a sudden I found myself at an apartment community. And up to this point, I had never lived in a community. I was fortunate enough to live with my parents, and they were at their house and they helped me go through college on a really affordable thing. But as a result, I had never lived with other people. So I'm trying to sell a product that I don't really understand fully and got to sell. Over time, I got familiar with it.
So how long have you been in the property management apartment industry?
It's actually 10 years as of this week. I joined back in
Wow.
2012 in October, the first week of October. So,
Well, happy anniversary. That's
yeah.
exciting. A decade under your belt.
hmm
So with a decade under your belt, I'm sure you've had your fair share of all the things happening. I joke around. I always say, I don't know how property management doesn't have some form of reality TV. I feel like that could be an ancillary income stream for us,
Yeah.
something fun. What's a memorable story that comes to mind when you think about your experience in this industry?
I think my favorite story is like during the first month that I had started with the company, I was familiar with the property manager, my regional, but I had not met all of the executives yet. So I only knew their name. The director of maintenance and new construction comes in, and he's an older gentleman, and I'm asking him like he's just someone coming in for an apartment, asking. He's going along with it to an extent because he just kind of wants to see who the new person selling the property is. And then he's like, "I'm just here to see your property manager." Then he kind of tells me who it is, and I'm embarrassed because I just try to sell him on a 2-bedroom loft that we're running a special on.
That's pretty funny.
Yep.
I'll tell you, when I ask people that question about what's one of your memorable stories, you see this like fear flash across people's face. Like, I don't know if I should tell one of those stories, a
Mhm.
fun, lighthearted story, but we all have those moments that just kind of live with us forever, and it makes what we do special.
Absolutely.
So having, again, a decade under your belt, I'm sure you've had the privilege of working with a lot of people coming into the industry. What kind of advice do you offer up to people who are new in their affiliation with the apartment industry?
Honestly, one of the biggest things I can recommend, and it's gonna sound like beating a dead horse here, it's getting involved with your association.
Mhm.
I went about, I think, 4 years into the industry before I got involved. I was a leasing consultant, moved my way up until I was a assistant property manager. And that's when I started going to my first events. I
Mhm.
didn't join a committee or the board until I was a property manager, and I had a little bit more flexibility with it. But the association lets you you develop these connections that you've never had before. Friends that I still have to this day that I can lean on. I can give them a call and ask for advice on things, both on the property side and on the business partner side. You develop on personal level and professionally, and it opens up opportunities for you that you never were aware of. I was able to attend conferences due to scholarships that I didn't know existed, or I was able to get involved and help out and volunteer an event that I've always been passionate about, but never knew there was that opportunity. So just honestly getting involved with that association, they need the help. We rely on our volunteers.
I echo that sentiment. And I'll tell you, I've been in the industry. Um, I don't know how old you are, Duy, but a long time, probably a long, maybe as long as your life. But because I started as a teenager, so I was very, very young. But I didn't get involved until probably about 10 years ago or so.
Mhm.
I would go to events every now and then, but I regret, I feel like I missed out on a lot of opportunities. And I think that's very good advice. And, getting involved and attending and participating is step one, and then serving is step two. And it's a lifetime of opportunities. So I think that's really great advice, and something I wish someone would have bestowed upon me about a decade sooner in my
Right.
career. Well, what keeps you staying in this industry? If you have a marketing background, you really didn't know what apartments were until you got into it. Why do you stay year after year?
The people. I So I started off on the multifamily market rate side,
Mhm.
and I've transitioned now to the affordable side and a pretty heavy focus on senior housing. That's what our
Okay.
company,
Yeah.
I think about 85%, 90% of our portfolio is all senior housing.
Uh-huh.
Um, but the people that you work with, both the residents, your colleagues, your coworkers, they make it unique, right? Like we have to have like the special kind of insanity to actually work in this industry because we get yelled at all the time by our residents, and we're trying to help them out, or we're trying to fix a problem and they just don't like they don't care about it. I'm like, hey, there's a leak. I'd love to take care of this leak. Let me get in. And they're like, no, no, no. Um, or people get mad at us that things are completely out of our control and we're just trying to work with them. But your coworkers make it reasonable, right? Like you laugh
Mhm.
it off and go enjoy yourselves afterwards, or you can work with your business partner to solve a solution. You solve a problem that and they have a solution you're not aware of. Like those kind of things make it so unique. So honestly, it always comes down to the people for me.
Well said. I always joked when I was a property manager, the little peanut sign that Lucy has,
Mhm.
psychiatry help 5 cents. I said, I want my desk to look like this because people come in and they literally tell you everything. You
Yes.
say everything, they tell you everything. They don't really have any kind of filter. And some days are absolutely crazy. Sometimes I feel like I need to be a certified, like, psychologist, therapist, some form of expert to do what we do. But um, I could not agree more. So, what have you seen over the years that you've
Mhm.
been in the industry? What would you say has come to your attention as a problem or a challenge that we are facing, something we need to really focus on solving for?
I think our biggest problem is just we have a terrible public relations.
Right.
Um, the industry does a lot of good work. I see it. You're able to recognize it when you see the companies that go out and do the work. You see it when the associations go out and do the work. But so often we are afraid of talking about it, right?
Right.
If someone asks us about something that's occurring, our common response is no comment, right?
Right.
That's what we like to say. And when we talk about the good we do, we often talk about that good within our own enclosed bubble,
Mhm.
or it's a larger bubble, but it's like presenting it at the state association, the national association. We'll talk about the good and how we gave back, but we don't talk about it to the rest of the world.
Right.
So what ends up happening is that we're vilified pretty heavily. And over the last 2 years, I think that's come to like the absolute front that property managers, owners, landlords are awful people. And we are not. We are doing everything we can. I mean, I see landlords work with people that are numerous months behind and helping them fill out applications. I just
Mhm.
helped a resident fill out their Sarah application before the time ran out to help her get back on her feet because she was months behind. no one talks about those extra things that we do to work with our residents to help them out. Nobody talks about how we create jobs, fulfill housing. None of that's ever talked about. It's always, this is what someone's doing and it's bad, because sometimes when you do just the normal things that are expected, it's just expected, so it continues on as normal.
Yeah, and I think right now what's going on with the state of our economy and the uncertainty that people are facing because of the economy, rent growth being what it is this very, I know the NAA had some materials that they shared last year about how the dollars of rent are spent to maintain the building. So
Yep.
when you look at rent growth and the rent increases and people think that landlords are just really getting rich off of this, it's not communicated well enough in mainstream,
Mhm.
news and media, that the cost of insuring and the cost of staffing properties and the cost of every single supply and service that we need to keep the buildings and the homes for our communities in the condition that is acceptable is also costing more. So it is, I agree. I think that is a challenge we'll face for a lot of times to come. It's difficult to change the perception of an industry
Yes.
versus an individual. So I definitely, I think that was well said. And I think we on the national level are very focused on
Mhm.
overcoming that. And I know locally, our GCNKAA, we have, it's called the Apartment Association Outreach Foundation. And the amount of money that this foundation raised and gave back to the community for rent and food assistance and things like that, it's staggering what
Mhm.
you can do in your local markets in addition to what's going on nationally. So, well said. Well, what else about multifamily specifically do you think we would be best served in focusing on? Any changes or improvements, any continued efforts?
Something that I've been seeing grow in the last few years is the DEI, so diversity, equity, and
Mhm.
inclusion.
Yep.
I mean, we just added the letter to the national stage. I see more and more locals and state associations making it a stronger focus, either by
Mhm.
creating a new committee, or
Yep.
they are adding additional classes for education, or they're just making it a point when they are working through their leadership. Because, we are a grass up movement, right? Like we build from everything from the ground up. So when we see our local leaders and our state leaders, represent us well, we end up seeing that out at the national level too. And so I think that's going to continue to work. I think that it needs to be more apparent in the NAA top leadership. That's just from what my perspective when I attended the events last year. It did need additional diversity,
Yeah.
but I know they're working on this because I see additional chairs being selected and I see the representation there. So I think it's only a matter of time before it expands even further. And with that, we're going to see new voices and we're going to see new insights on how we can grow as an industry.
Yeah, it has been very exciting. I had the privilege of being on the DE&I committee this year at the national level, and our local affiliate started a task force that will turn into a committee next year. And my very close friend is chairing, two of my very close friends chairing that committee, but one is my dearest friend in the industry. And so it makes me proud to know that we are focused on it because we have a lot of work to do in our industry and in the world in general. So it makes me very proud that we're on board and making it a focus. So again, well said, and I agree. There's nothing I would challenge you on yet, Duy. We're all on the same page here. Well, I would love. I'm going to come back to. We're going to kind of tile this up with a pretty bow at
Yeah,
the end in terms of the professional side of things, but I want to shift gears and get to know you a little bit personally. This is my favorite part of this initiative. I love talking to industry
mhm,
professionals. I could talk about the apartment industry all day long, but I, like you, I'm a lover of people, and I love knowing who people are because I think that's what makes life interesting. And if you are ready to do so, I have a couple of questions to help us get to know you better.
absolutely.
Well, first of all, tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so I am an immigrant. I moved here when I was two with my mother and my father and my older brother. And then later on, and I have a younger sister as well. We're from Vietnam. Half of our family is still in Vietnam, so my mom's entire side of the family is still there, and then my dad's side of the family is over here. And we kind of landed in Grand Rapids, Michigan,
Mhm.
because Grand Rapids has a really strong Vietnamese community. But there was a point that if you drove down one of the main streets, an entire section, like a mile strip, there was just Vietnamese stores and
Wow.
restaurants. And if you still want like some of the best Vietnamese food in Michigan, it is in Grand Rapids. So
Really?
yeah.
Well, that is exciting. I didn't know that about Grand Rapids. I shared with you Village Green is based in Southfield, Michigan, and we have a pretty big presence now on the west side of the state.
Yep.
I'm not fully versed in my Michigan geography, but we immediately made that connection. Maybe that's why I asked you first if you would
Yep.
be my guest here today. Well, that's exciting. So
Mhm.
I'm sure coming here at 2 years old, you don't have memories really of anywhere except your home, right?
I don't. We did go back and visit when I was about 9
Okay.
years old. I was in fourth grade, and we ended up. It was only supposed to be a 1 month visit,
Uh-huh.
and it ended up being 6 months because there was just every time we scheduled a new flight. That year there was like record number of like winter storms, so we ended up staying like
Oh,
6 months there, which was really
wow.
cool as a kid.
Sure.
But I was also 6 months of school that I missed. So,
Oh, wow. Well, something tells me that you caught up very quickly.
but yeah, yeah. I actually had my neighbor was a teacher, so he just taught
Oh,
me all the
nice.
material that I was supposed to work on. So the teacher just like we just kept going through the book. So it worked out pretty well.
Well, that's quite the adventure to go anywhere for any length of time like that. But would you call that a vacation? And is that the most memorable vacation you've had? Or if not, what's one of the most memorable vacations you've taken?
That's the most memorable vacation with my family that I've ever
Ye-
had. My
Okay.
most memorable vacation was with my friends. This was like 5, 6 years ago.
Uh-huh.
We went to New Orleans. Um, and we were supposed to go to New Orleans during Crawfish Festival. What we didn't know is we scheduled it, and then the website didn't list any of the years, and we apparently we booked it at the end of the one year. We're going next year. They never updated their website to reflect it, so we ended up going during Jazz Fest, but
Oh.
we couldn't go to Jazz Fest because it was sold out and everything. Um, but it was a great time because I love local food. We got to try like
Mhm.
the places that had the original po' boys. I love seafood, so we got to do an insane amount of like scallops
Uh-huh.
and mussels and crawfish, and all the wonderful things, right? Um, it rained the entire time though.
Yeah. Oh no. What
It
month was it? Do you remember?
I think this was
Did they?
during May area.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Because
uh, but yeah, it stormed the entire time.
oh man. So I went to New Orleans for the first time in February of this
Mhm.
year, or January of this year. And I also went for a concert. I noticed on your survey you said you went and is that where you got to see Stevie Wonder?
It is, yeah. There was jazz festival going on. They were paying tribute to Prince because he had just passed away,
Oh, okay.
and everyone wanted to do a tribute to him. Stevie Wonder had, his own time for it, but the whole thing got rained out. So
Oh,
we happened to be on Bourbon Street, because there is a jazz club on there that I wanted to go check out. I enjoy cocktails. We're supposed to make like a legendary Sazerac. So I wanted to go there, enjoy the jazz club with that. And then we're sitting down and in like the back corner enjoying a drink. And then the service coming out like, guys, we need to rearrange the room. Something's happening tonight. We're not sure what. So over the course of like an hour, the whole place fills up. They put out additional seating because it's in the hotel. The whole hotel lobby is now packed, and
mhm.
Stevie Wonder just puts on a private show
What?
to everyone because he still wanted to do that tribute, and he got to do it with the band, which was like an insane experience. So
That is unbelievable. Wow. My story is nothing as exciting as that. I just went to see Elton John and it was really cool. And um, I only wish I would have gone to New Orleans when I probably could have hung a little better than I did
mhm.
because I went hard and fast for several days. And then I was like, I don't know if I should ever go back there again.
Yeah, we balanced it. We went
Whew.
from like a fun day of like enjoying things, and then another day that was more relaxed. Got to walk around like the French Quarter.
Yeah,
We got to go to Cafe Du Monde as well, and enjoy
nice.
it. So things like that.
Well, fun. Well, that is very exciting. Any vacations on the horizon? Anything you're planning or saving for right now?
I'm actually supposed to go back to Vietnam finally. I haven't been back in I think 20 years now. We were supposed to go with the family right before the pandemic started. We actually were in the process of booking our flights for that summer, and then the pandemic happened, so we ended up never purchasing those tickets. And my mom and dad want to go back this Christmas. So if all things work out, we'll be going. Otherwise, we might have to push it out just a little bit further.
Well, that is definitely something to look forward to. It's nice that vacations and traveling and the world is kind of getting back to normal again. I was shocked at how much that impacted people not being
Mhm.
able to go visit family and or just enjoy, time and enjoy traveling. So, well, good.
Mhm.
Well, what about reading? If you're a reader, what's one of the best books that you've read?
So I recently got back into reading, and audiobooks helped me a ton with that because I just, I've been traveling a lot for work. So being able to listen to one. Brandon Sanderson, he writes this whole series of books. They're connected in something called the Cosmere.
Mhm.
And what people consider as his best of his best is the Stormlight Archives. And they're like intense books. I think like the normal book for audio is like anywhere from like 10 to 17 hours, like a
Wow.
standard book. His books are roughly 50 hours.
Holy moly.
And that's just one book. So you're getting like 3 to 4 books worth of content here with just one of his
Yeah.
purchases, and just amazing world building, character development. He breaks a lot of the tropes. So I love that too, because I don't like necessarily reading a book that's just packed full of tropes. So
Right. I feel like I would like something like that because I go through like a grieving period when I end a book, and I'm a
yep.
huge audible listener. But then I have to like mourn for a period of time before I can start something. So I do tend to find series so that I can, you
Just
know,
keep consuming it.
get related. Yeah, definitely. It's always hard when even if it's a 12 or 15-hour book, I'm like, I need more. I need
Yep.
much more than you get so invested. Well, what about podcasts? What's a good podcast you would recommend?
So when I listen to podcasts, I usually want to like feed my brain. Um, so like there's a person that kind of blew up on TikTok and YouTube, Sukiyaki, I think is his name. He does a
Mhm.
history of everything. So he does like these deep dives
Uh-huh.
into really obscure topics. Like what I think his first episode is just on potatoes and talking about how potatoes went from being the food that nobody wants to like being a delicacy, and how royalty tricked everybody into eating it. And then how it became like the mainstay it is now, or talking about like uh celebrity-esque animals and when they were on ships and stuff like that, and if they survived, and whatever everything. And then Hidden Brain is always a great one for me because they kind of just dive into like they have experts come on talk about these like interesting topics. But when I want to enjoy my podcast, Moth Radio, I got to see a live show of it recently.
Oh,
It's so great.
so can I tell you, I was invited to be a part of the um, I'm already education advisory panel for
Mhm.
NAA. And so we're reviewing topics. And this initiative that we're doing right now, the Weekly Member Spotlight, is something that I submitted for a session last year. And it didn't get selected, but I got some feedback and I was talking about it in this advisory because I think people telling their story is so powerful and impactful. And, it's kind of like that story from so long ago about the man walking down the beach throwing starfish back into the ocean, and
Mhm.
his friend is like, what are you doing? You can't make a difference. And he says, I did for that one.
Yep.
And why we try to quantify what making a difference looks like. Everyone has a story and everyone deserves to tell it, and there are people that need to hear it. So Clark Everett from the NAA actually brought up the moth, and I was like, that's it, like that's the concept for sure. And so I don't know how I'm going to use that in I might tap you, Dewey, to help me with this session, but I love that, and that is my favorite podcast.
Yep.
This initiative too, I think selfishly, the number of books and podcasts that have been recommended that have impacted me and
Mhm.
that I have shared with people, it's like if that's the only benefit of this interview, I've written down both of these. The what is it?
Stormlight Archives.
Rain, Hidden
And
Brain.
yep.
All right, I got it. Well, what do you like to do in your spare time? Assuming you're not working, reading, or listening to a podcast, what other hobbies do you have?
So I'm a pretty big nerd. I play cards. It's a game called Magic the Gathering. I travel quite a bit for it. I actually was just down in Virginia this last weekend
Okay.
for an event. So it's like the easiest way for me to see my friends.
Yeah.
And we make a weekend of it every time. So like this one was a 4-day weekend. We drive down on Friday, do the event Saturday and Sunday, and then we drive back on the following day. We get to check out local eats. Like while we were down there, we found an amazing English style pub. We got to check out like some places that were famous for their fried chicken. And then breweries, because I always enjoy a good beer. So we got to check out some of that and cocktails. So
Nice. Well, that sounds fun. So what is Magic Gathering? I heard you say cards, but I'm not familiar.
um it's a collectible card game. You build decks and you play against your opponents. You'll go through the tournament. So like they'll do what's called like a Swiss style tournament often. So you have to play against random people, and then whoever has certain amount of wins, you get to advance to the next day. If you keep doing, you get to win some money as well, or go to bigger tournaments. That actually will be traveling to Ohio later this month for an event, and
Nice.
then next month is Atlanta, and then the following month is Kentucky.
Wonderful. What part of Ohio?
I think it's a Newark, Ohio area.
Okay. I
So
think that's central Ohio, not
yeah.
not 100%. Well, I heard you say eats and drinks, so
Yes.
sounds like you might be a connoisseur of sorts. What's one of your favorite foods or restaurants to enjoy?
So I love food. I don't like discriminate when it comes to food. But I usually try to take the route of finding the local favorite spot, like
Hmm.
the spot that they like. If the people that live there don't want to do anything too much crazy, they're gonna go there for food, right? And I enjoy fancier spots when the mood strikes, but often I want that local hole in the
Oh
wall.
yeah,
That's where the real food is to me. So,
absolutely. So how do you find those? Do you use Yelp or is there an app or your friends that are from the area?
if I have friends in the area, it's easy. They'll
Yeah.
tell me what to do. Other times it's talking to the locals. Like
Hmm.
when we were down in New Orleans, for example, I got to talk to the bartender on the steamboat when we did the steamboat tour,
Uh-huh.
and she apparently one was a world-class bartender that just does this during the day, but during the
Hmm.
evening she works at a legendary bar, and she competes in world bartending competitions.
Nice.
But she was telling us like the spots to go for in the French Quarter to go have a bite to eat, where to actually get some proper seafood we're not going to get overcharged for. So just talking to the people in the area, and it was the same thing when we went to um, Roanoke, Virginia. I'll talk to the locals
Nice.
there because you can just spark a conversation. Maybe you check out like one or two spots yourself by going online and figuring out like the good spots, and then from there talk to people that are at those locations about where other places they would recommend.
Yeah, the internet is such an untrustworthy source when it comes to restaurants and
It
food. When
is.
you start seeing like the top 10 restaurants, including chain restaurants, I'm tapping out.
Yep, and that's my rule. Anything that's a chain, immediately removed.
Yep, definitely. So we've covered your book reading, podcast, food preferences. What about TV shows or movie? What's one of your favorites?
So my favorites of all time is like Breaking Bad or The Wire. There's just such good story there.
Mhm.
The characters are wonderful. You love them, you hate them. Um, and I'm a little critical on this when it comes to TV shows. They knew what they wanted to do and then they left.
Eh,
Uh, so like, when he was creating Breaking Bad, he knew it was gonna be roughly 5 seasons.
mhm.
He knew how he wanted the story to start. He knew some big milestones he wanted to hit, and then he knew how he wanted to culminate the story and then walk away. Wire, very much the same thing. I think the worst thing that could ever happen to a show is when a TV channel goes, well, you did so great for 3 seasons. We know you want it to be done after 4, but we're going to go ahead and ask you to stretch it to 8. And they're like, it doesn't really work. The story's kind of
Mhm.
done.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I love this question, and it's been so, I don't think I've ever had the same answer twice. If you could be any TV or movie character, who would you be and
hmm,
why?
let's see. So, Anthony Bourdain, he did the show Parts Unknown, where he got to come around, travel the world. And even though it was a food travel blog, it was a way for him to get into areas that he's not really supposed to either, and
Mhm.
discover people and have those connections. um he had such a passion for food, for people. His books, read his books are great. Tells you about the kitchen world, and also what you shouldn't order for brunch, what you should avoid, what days are best to go get food. um but like I wholeheartedly believe that food connects the entire world. And
Absolutely.
surrounding yourself, and it's how you get to know people.
Yeah.
I think one of his quotes is, meals make society. They hold the fabric together in lots of ways that were charming and interesting and intoxicating to me. The perfect meal, or the best meal, occurs in a context that frequently has little to do with the food itself,
I
because it's
love
about who you're sharing that meal with.
Mhm.
And my mom and my dad, they taught me that a lot, because in the Vietnamese culture, it's pretty big deal that when you come over, you're going to get a meal to eat.
Yeah.
um because like we were poor growing up, so we're not able to offer everything. But if you came over, you're going to get a bowl of rice or a bowl of noodles and something
Yeah.
to have. And so yeah, I just find that I was always really jealous of the world that he got to explore and the people he got to see. So
Well, I love that. That is fascinating, and it's true. And I think in our culture, I guess the Western culture, you could call it, there's the concept of breaking bread together. And I always found that very interesting. And as I kind of dove into what that meant and understand, I don't care about food. I like eating for
yeah.
sure. I like treats, I like desserts and things like that. But I don't, food to me, I love though
Yeah.
going out to eat and being together and having an occasion and preparing a meal. And even though I am the worst cook, it is simple. It is not like, I admire and I watch all of the cooking shows, but I don't have that. And it doesn't even, when I went to New Orleans, I ate crab cake, but I didn't eat any kind of, it's just not who I am. But
Right.
there is nothing I would rather do than go sit down and have a drink and have a meal and have the togetherness. So when you wrote that, I was like, that's such a deep concept. And it's, again, this initiative of getting to know people. It's about intentional time where you sit down with people and you be human
Yeah.
together. Everyone eats and everyone has to um, nourish your body in
Mhm.
some form. And so it breaks down so many different barriers.
Yeah.
Well, I love that so much. And it's fun when we ask that question locally. I've also learned about a lot of restaurants that I wouldn't
Mhm.
have otherwise known or gone to necessarily. So that's one of my favorite questions as well. Well, I think we're down to the last few questions and I'll let you get about your day, sir. This has been wonderful. Again, I could talk for hours. That's the other risk of this. Like this could
Yeah.
go on forever. Um, a little bit more about your favorites. What's one of the best concerts that you've ever been to?
So I don't go to too many concerts. I do enjoy music quite a bit. But like as I grew older, I found that I enjoy going to events that I can like enjoy the concert, listen to the music, enjoy the artist, but still be able to, hear myself at the end of it. But when I was growing up, I was really big into like that pop punk scene.
Mhm.
I believe it was middle school. There was the Black Clouds and Underdog concert. So like
Ooh.
it was the teenage emo kid's dream. You had Fall Out Boy, All American Rejects, Hawthorne Heights. And then they had like I think two or three other bands that showed up and traveled with them, depending on the region they're at. But it was just like the biggest bands at the time for us. And I was just like, oh my God, I get to go see this with my friends. And I think it was my first legit concert. So to this day, I still compare everything to it.
You had me at All American Rejects.
Yes.
And just for some confirmation of the age gap I referenced earlier, my first concert was New Kids on the Block.
Ooh.
Like back in the old back when they were teenagers.
Yeah.
Or maybe 20, however old they were when they were on the scene. But
Right.
yes, that's hilarious. Well, another very favorite, and you shared a picture, so I got to see this little guy. Tell us about your pet.
Yeah. So last year was a pretty big change for me. I had switched companies, moved to the other side of the state, bought a house, but it also included getting a dog. And I've always wanted a dog. And my friend, his dog had a litter. And at that time, I was still living in a condo that didn't allow any pets. I was like, okay, it sucks, but I don't have a yard. I can't have a pet right now. It just doesn't work out. Then they were supposed to go get them fixed. And then they didn't. They waited an extra week or two. And then all of a sudden they had another litter of puppies coming. So they're like, well, it works out. You now have a house. You got to get one of these puppies. I said, okay, sure. So I got him. His name is Winston. He is a mutt as mutt can be. He's like an Australian shepherd and cattle dog and a lab, and I think there's some bull terrier in him. And then like there's another 25% that said, hey, the percentages here are small enough that we just group them together. Insane ball of energy. My friend that's a trainer has been helping me with him because he's such a handful last year. He they basically told me, when you get a dog, most people get these kind of dogs, they're much easier going, they relax. Your dog basically doesn't have that. He always wants to be going because of that hurting in him.
Aw.
When I drop him off with the dog sitters and everything like that, they'll usually have like other dogs with them.
Yeah.
The last one he was with, he ran out the other 3 dogs till they were done, and he was still going. So
That's hilarious. Well, he is a cute puppy,
yes.
I will tell you that. So that hopefully makes the difficultness easier to bear, right?
Yep, it is.
Well, that again, and thank you for sharing a picture. There was a time when this initiative started that it was only the written portion of the interview before we started doing this. So I got all the pictures, and then we started doing interviews, and I'm like, I want to see pictures. I want to see the pet pictures, the vacation pictures. Like I want to see it all. And so thank you for sharing. And you also shared a picture of Barack Obama and
Anthony Bourdain.
Anthony,
Yep.
yes. And that was really nice to see. So when I do make the post about this and put the project together, I'll include those because I think it's, again, it just, it sheds light. A picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Absolutely.
Well, okay, down to the last couple of questions.
Mhm.
Share a random fun fact about yourself that most people wouldn't know unless they were talking personally like this with you.
I think a lot of my friends and coworkers find out that I have a pretty hefty obsession with coffee, cocktails, cooking, and whiskey.
Oh,
Um, so coffee, I end up having like I think I'm up to like 8 to 10 devices now that make different types of coffee,
wow.
just so I can experiment with it. Cocktails, I got through a phase of like I was making different cocktails for people. Every event, I had like 3 to 4 different cocktails batch, and I would make them extra stuff as well. And I still do that to an extent, but the other ones like cooking, I will always cook for my friends. Any event that I am hosting, you can guarantee there's going to be a home cooked meal. And then whiskey, I have an entire wall dedicated to different whiskeys that I pick up, and especially when I travel, I love picking up regional whiskeys.
Nice. So I heard you say you were going to Kentucky. If you're going
Mhm.
anywhere near Louisville, have you done the Bourbon Trail before?
I have. I was very fortunate. I think this was like 4 years ago.
Uh-huh.
I got to do the tour and I got to go to Maker's Mark, Willett Distillery, um, and then one other one that was a small time. And then I got to go back um, last year, and we ended up going to I think 5 or 6 different distilleries. So I love checking out those smaller ones that you can't. Michigan is pretty restrictive when it comes to who
Mhm.
can send liquor up here. So anytime I can get my hands on ones that are just not available here, I love it.
Yes. Well, very nice.
Mhm,
A friend of mine who you might know through the industry, Abby Huffman is her name.
mhm.
She was on the supplier side. She's on the operations side now, and she serves at the national level. Her 40, or I think it was not her 40th, but a milestone birthday just
Mhm.
this past weekend. And I saw on social media, she and her husband did the Louisville Bourbon Trail and
Oh,
got
nice.
into Angel's Envy and got a bottle. And I was like, wow,
Very cool. Angels
that's
Envy
a
is an amazing company.
very special one. All right. Well, we're going to kind of round this out, tie it
Mhm.
back up in a nice, pretty bow, get back to the professional side of things, even though the personal side is so much fun. I know so much more about you now. And I think, again, because our industry is what it is, our customers live with us. I don't
Mhm.
think there is an industry that is as intimate with their customers as we are.
I
People
would
live with us and they live with us for years and years and years, sometimes a lifetime. And because of that, I think knowing personally people in the industry, it really makes what we do worthwhile. So thank you for being open and candid and for volunteering and participating in this fun activity, but I want to round it back out with a couple of questions related to you as a professional. I can tell because you are so passionate about our industry and you're so involved at the national level that you take education and designations very importantly. And so I wanted to take a moment and ask you to share a little bit about the designations that you have and just how you've invested in your own training and development to be the best professional you can be.
Yeah. So I was fortunate. My prior company did allow for me to go pursue my CAM and my CAPS. One of those things where a lot of companies do reward you with additional education opportunities, and whether that's paying for it completely, or some companies will pay for half and half and reimburse you the other half once you pass, something along those lines. So I do have my CAM and my CAPS. I was just recently informed that I can start to pursue some additional designations. So I'm looking at some. These now may be more so designations that I get that I just want to have a better understanding of what I'm sending my team to go get. If I send them to go get their CALP or their CAMT, I want to know what they're actually getting out of it and what the benefits are, because you have to understand where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, to help them fill in those gaps with education. Beyond that, on a formal education, I do have my bachelor's and my master's in business administration, and I'll be actually starting my path to my doctorate starting next year in business administration with a focus on management. And then I have to figure out how to fit the CPM with this as well.
Well, I love the focus on education and development. And I think the rationale behind why you find that so important is spot on. So thank you on behalf of our industry for investing your own time into those designations and making it a priority. So I very much admire that. And thank you for sharing that. The last question, and I do end this interview with this question for every person that we talk to, and I love to ask people that I know. So this, I'm going to have to trust you for your word, and I absolutely do. But how do you think the people who have worked with you in your career in this industry, how do you think they would describe you as a professional, Duy?
As a professional, I think they describe me as someone that will generally just drop anything to help them out. Um, Early on in my career, one of the executives that was doing the training, David Soul, he still does all the training now. He's the chair of our state education committee. He had told me that no matter how high you get up in any company, it doesn't matter. Your role itself with any company doesn't matter if your teams on site can't do their job. So if your leasing consultant, your maintenance technician, your property managers, if they're not able to do their job, nothing else you do will matter. So I have always made it a priority that if anyone on site needs assistance, unless there's absolutely something that I could not drop, I will rearrange my schedule and I'll go help them out. And this might just be a bad phone call. A leasing consultant got yelled at because something out of her control and someone was declined. I'll just listen to them.
Right.
If they need me to help put in an appliance, I'm more than happy to help them lift up an appliance up 2 flights of stairs. Those things don't matter to me because I would rather help them get through their day. Because if they're enjoying their work, they're enjoying their day, they're getting through it, and we're doing it together, that's a team member you're going to have forever, and that's a team member you can rely on. And then my life becomes easier because I know that I don't have to worry about that site anymore. I know that if they need assistance, they'll reach out, and then I can continue doing what I need to do to make the company succeed.
Well said. Well, thank you so much. Again, this has been fantastic. I have loved our time. I can't wait to share this interview with our local GCNKAA members and with our fellow Lyceum program participants. So thank you again, Duy. I will talk to you very soon. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you again next week for another edition of the Weekly Member Spotlight.